Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. While out in Dravania, Y'shtola and Cid get to see firsthand as a group of goblins activate a giant machine that is not a machine at all. It's actually a primal. The two of them are still out there trying to learn more about the strange primal when the Warrior of Light shows up. The goblins of Idyllshire are worried because the primal is big enough to crush their entire settlement, but Y'shtola shows up right on time to tell Slowfix to calm down. Did I mention how much I love the different goblin names? Y'shtola's glad that you're there because the situation is pretty serious. The shifting of the ether in the area proves that the big machine is in fact a primal. The good news is it stopped moving when it had barely popped out of the river. The bad news is there's no telling when it will start moving again, or what it will do once it does. The other problem is the thing is draining the ether from the surrounding area very fast and will leave the area uninhabitable in a few days if it's not stopped. Slowfix definitely doesn't want that since the goblins all only recently found a place to call home. Y'shtola doesn't plan on letting them lose their home either, so the Scions of the Seventh Dawn are officially on the job. But since this mechanical primal is so big, they can't just take over and deal with it alone. Attacking it will have to be done in two ways. Of course, there's the Warrior of Light's usual stabby boom boom method, but Y'shtola also wants to try cutting off its ether supply by separating it from the land. For that, she plans on getting help from Master Matoya, which will of course take time because the old woman wouldn't rush to do anything even if the world was ending, which is why Y'shtola has Cid keeping an eye on the primal. Since it is a machine, he'll probably be the best person to help you deal with it anyway. As expected, if the thing wakes up again, Y'shtola wants you to do everything you can to keep it away from Idyllshire. With the plan made, Y'shtola heads off to talk to Matoya, while Slowfix sends the Warrior of Light to talk to Backrix, who should know where Cid is. You don't have to wait long to find Cid, because he shows up to talk to Backrix as soon as you get there. He knew the situation was bad, but once the Warrior of Light tells him just how fast the primal is draining the land's ether, he realizes that it's way worse than he thought. From what he's learned from Backrix, it's very likely that the Illuminati are behind this. They know how to summon a primal, and they're crazy enough to do it. Every story has some version of the Illuminati, and the group in Final Fantasy XIV is made up of goblins who want to control all of the world's technology and knowledge, and they have no problem killing people to get what they want. And since it seems like they're actually inside of the primal, the odds of them killing a lot of people are pretty high. Destroying the thing won't be all that easy since you have to find a way inside, deal with the Illuminati, then destroy the primal's engine, which will only work if it's actually a machine. And there's the problem of the barrier that's around the thing that has to be dealt with too. From what Backrix says, the barrier was there long before the primal. It popped up 3 years ago after a big earthquake. Roundrocks, another goblin, was there and she saw the whole thing. She's Slowfix's daughter and spends way more time collecting junk than the other goblins. In short, she's a hoarder. Young she may be, but she remembers exactly what she saw. The mechanical primal had rose up out of the water, which caused the earthquakes, which means this isn't the first time someone summoned that particular primal, but they failed the last time. So Cid's question is, was it the Illuminati who had summoned it before, or was it someone else entirely? A goblin that you all know well, who is apparently an expert on the Illuminati, Brayflox Alltalks, shows up, and Cid decides to talk to her to get some information on your enemies, while the Warrior of Light goes to help Biggs and Wedge find a way into the giant primal. While you're all making your plans, an Al Ra with the scar on her face watches you from a distance. The barrier is posing a problem for Biggs and Wedge, but when the primal came out of the water, it put one of its hands on shore through the barrier, giving the two of them an entry point into the big machine. Of course it's locked, and there doesn't seem to be a keyhole or anything, so Wedge tapped into the Illuminati's communications and is trying to see if they'll mention a way to get into the thing. He's getting a signal, but it's just repeating a weird pattern over and over. Wedge is positive that it's a code, and the Illuminati came up with a crystal that they use to decrypt their messages. All Wedge needs is one of those, and he's positive that he can figure out the message. Unfortunately, he doesn't know where to find one, but Redbrix thinks that Roundrocks might have one in her pile of stuff. Wedge has built a device that would detect the crystal if it's nearby, so it gives it to you and sends you to go sift through Round Rock's stash. The goblin does have one of the crystals, but it's her favorite treasure, so she doesn't really want to give it to you. But since you're doing something important, you can have it as long as you bring it back. So the Warrior of Light brings it to Wedge, and the message is immediately decoded. They're talking about some nonsense, but that's clearly another code. Apparently they made a failsafe just in case someone got their hands on one of their crystals. The scar-faced Owl Ra shows up, and she says that she can crack the code if you're willing to make a deal with her. Her name is Midae and she's a treasure hunter. She wants something that's inside of the giant, and she'll help you get inside if you help her make it out with the item. She's well aware of the fact that the Illuminati are inside of the primal, which is why she came to you. Strength in numbers and all that. None of you have any reason to object, so she tells Biggs how to open the hatch into the machine, and it actually works. The fact that the Illuminati were announcing the code to enter the place seems a bit weird to Sid, but it opened the door so he'll go with it. Unfortunately, Brayflox didn't know all that much about the Illuminati's plan or the primal, which means you'll just have to learn about it while you explore. Since the thing is technically a giant machine, if the Warrior of Light and his team follows the pipes and wires, they should be able to reach the core. Midae doesn't care as long as she gets to come with you. Sid would join you, but he has one thing to do first, so the Warrior of Light heads into the giant primal to deal with the Illuminati. The path into the primal is guarded by some very large and heavily armed machines that the Warrior of Light makes short work of, which opens the way forward for Midae and an unexpected Round Rocks who couldn't help but to sneak in after you in hopes of finding new treasures. The machine bits aren't what Midae is looking for, so she doesn't care if the goblin takes them. Apparently what she's after wasn't in the area at all, something that's pointed out by a group of newcomers who show up. It's the Illuminati, and their leader, Quick Thinks All Thoughts. That has to be the best goblin name ever. Midae pulls a gun on them, but one of the goblins says that they all have explosives on their backs, so shooting them isn't a good idea. Another of the goblins taunts you all, saying that the Enigma Codex is gone, and they've already started the Alexander initiative, which is way more than he was supposed to say, since none of you had a clue what they were planning at all. It's very likely that Quick Thinks was going to kill the blabbermouth goblin, but Midae takes the opportunity to shoot at them, causing their packs to explode. And since they're so far away from you, the explosions only hurt the goblins, which gives you all time to run, but not before Round Rocks asks what is the Enigma Codex. It turns out that's the treasure that Midae is after, but she'll have to try for it at a safer time. Back safe and sound at your camp, you let Biggs know what happened. After you tell him about your run-in with the Illuminati, he figures that Alexander might actually be the primal's name, and since you didn't find its core, that means you have to do more searching, but at least you all managed to make it out of there alive. Biggs is ready to take another crack at finding the core whenever you are, and you should probably get started soon, since Wedge is hearing chants about death to the Uplanders coming through the Link Pearl. Seems like you may have started a war with the Illuminati after your last encounter, so it'll probably be more guards blocking your way the next time. As expected, when the Warrior of Light continues his trip into the core, the path is blocked by an army of goblins and their deadly tech that takes a lot of sword swipes to bring down. A lot of explosions later, the battle is done, and Sid, Midae, and Round Rock show up to admire your handiwork. We all knew that Sid couldn't avoid seeing the place for himself, so it was only a matter of time before he showed up in person. Sid's curious about what Midae is searching for, and she doesn't even try to hide it. She wants the Enigma Codex, which is a book that holds the work of one of the greatest masters of technology from a little over 100 years ago. It has plans inside for everything from machines that can run for a century to things that can make better cheese. Even selling a single page from the book would be worth millions. The most important bit of info in the book, however, is a plan for a walking citadel. That's the form that the Illuminati's primal took, since they used the book's knowledge to summon it, a fact that Midae already knew since she'd both seen and read from the Enigma Codex. The citadel was meant to be a fully self-contained city, with places to live and grow crops, so the people who lived there would never have to leave. Add to that the fact that the place was nearly impregnable and able to move back and forth, it became the perfect fortress, one that was meant to take the world's best and brightest to all the corners of the world so they could learn the mysteries of creation, all from inside of the fortress named Alexander. The Illuminati are hoping to use the fortress to gather knowledge in the same way, but this version of Alexander is actually a primal, which means walking it around the world would leave a trail of etherless wastelands in its wake, which adds to the extreme need to stop the Illuminati as soon as possible. There seems to be a problem on the Alexander front, but Sid's already working on fixing it. The communications that Wedge has been picking up have been bugging him for a while, because something about them just don't make sense. The Illuminati have already made a base inside of Alexander, which means they had to have found a way through the barrier. So why did they need to use the hatch that's sticking outside of the barrier at all? And why are they sending out coded messages on how to unlock a door that they both don't need and should have already unlocked? The answer is simple. The Illuminati must have a spy in Idleshire that was using the hatch to go back and forth. The spy probably knows that you've all broken the code, which means he or she won't be able to use the hatch for a while. That means the spy will need to make contact with the Illuminati soon, so Sid had everyone clear the area around the entrance so you all could watch for the spy, then follow him. Before the words are fully out of his mouth, Wedge gets a call from Redbrick saying that Brayflox went inside of Alexander, but there's no way that she's a spy for the Illuminati, so someone had to be pretending to be her. Whatever the case, you all race off to find out what exactly is going on. You all chase the goblin through more of the giant primal fortress, fighting your way past monsters and what looks like a human-shaped Capri Sun, which has to be the strangest security guard ever, before the Warrior of Light, Sid, Midae, and Round Rocks catch up to the spy. Quick Thinks All Thoughts and a few of the Illuminati members arrive to give the spy a chance to report that whatever the Illuminati was searching for has been found. Then they shoot him. That's not really the best way to inspire loyalty in your subordinates, but Quick Thinks isn't really worried about anything other than completing his mission of bringing the world into harmony by weeding out the useless parts. He knows that Alexander will suck the life out of everyone outside of it, but those the Illuminati choose will be safe inside its walls. They will get to live on as masters of knowledge who will rebuild the world better than it was before. He figures that the smartest uplanders will join him, and the stupid ones don't deserve to see his perfect world anyway. Instead of killing the goblin like he should have, the Warrior of Light just watches Quick Thinks leave. Sid is convinced that the goblins are insane, but Midae doesn't see it all so black and white as that. They are following the plans laid out in the Enigma Codex, but they are rushing the process, which is why it seems so bad. That part doesn't make the Illuminati crazy. The fact that they're crazy makes them crazy, but anyone can do a lot of harm in an attempt to do good if they aren't careful, and that doesn't necessarily make them crazy. She's clearly not talking about the goblins, but whatever or whoever she's thinking about, she's not interested in saying more at the moment. But she does think that she can stop Alexander if you can get her to the core. From what she read in the Enigma Codex, she knows that the core is nearby, but she's not sure how close you are to it. Round Rocks has been paying more attention to the path that you traveled, and since the core is in the chest, she's able to point you all in the right direction, but it definitely won't be unguarded, so you all head out to get prepared to charge into the core. You don't have long, because if the Illuminati fully wake Alexander, they will be all but unstoppable, so the Warrior of Light repairs his gear and heads into the core with Midae. It's guarded by yet another very sturdy machine, one that takes a lot more punishment before it's taken down, but after hitting it enough, it explodes just like everything else. With the way clear, Biggs and Wedge join the Warrior of Light and Midae at the very large heart of Alexander. True to her word, Midae climbs on top of the core and opens it with a few button presses, but Quick Thinks All Thoughts shows up, admitting that maybe you're all smarter than he gave you credit for, but he doesn't seem all that upset about what you've done. From what Wedge sees, the goblin rides deeper into Alexander, talking like he actually won, almost like he wanted you all to deactivate the core. What's even more odd is Quick Thinks shows up alone, like he'd sent his honor guard off to do something more important even than watching his back. The thought hits Wedge that the goblin might have sent his minions off to Idleshire while you were all away, so you all race out of the primal only to find that the Illuminati did attack the place. It was a strange attack according to Redbricks, because they only took useless junk that they stole from Round Rocks, which means what they took probably was anything but useless, and they made it a point to take everything that she'd gathered. They may have even taken her if she hadn't been out looking for more stuff during the attack. It's Sid and Biggs to the rescue. They show up with one very unconscious goblin thief as well as Round Rocks' possessions. Biggs had figured that the thief might be in the area, and with a little searching they found him. But the question is, what exactly were the Illuminati looking for in Round Rocks' stash? They clearly hadn't found it, otherwise they wouldn't have still been hanging around, which makes the little goblin wonder if what they were after was the stone that she loaned to you. She'd never taken it out of Wedge's machine, so it wasn't in her stash. She'd found it by the Charlian ruins when Alexander first appeared, something that Midae was completely unaware of. When she takes out the stone and it glows, Midae recognizes it as a piece of the Enigma Codex, which means the only reason the Illuminati hasn't proceeded with their plan is because they don't have the completed codex, meaning they will definitely be back, and you and the mysterious Midae will have to deal with them. After doing a bit of thinking, Round Rocks, after realizing that the glowstone is the thing that Midae has been searching for this entire time, decides to give it to the Al Ra, and since there aren't many people who could take it from the Warrior of Light, the goblin gives it to him so he can give it to Midae. The treasure hunter is usually staring at Alexander from nearby, so it isn't hard to track her down. Midae is flattered that the goblin is willing to give away her most precious possession, and at first she wasn't gonna accept it, but she decides that it would be better in the hands of someone who could actually keep it safe. Round Rocks isn't exactly what you'd call a fighter, so Midae decides to hold on to it, even though to her, the piece of the Enigma Codex is nothing more than any other rock. When Round Rocks held it, the stone had let out a flash of light, but that hadn't happened when anyone else touched it, not even the Warrior of Light. The Codex is protected by magic that keeps it from being read by anyone who doesn't believe in what it says down to their very core. It's very rare to find a person that can actually read it, which means if the Illuminati find out that Round Rocks can, they'll take her. Midae figures that the best way to keep Round Rocks safe would be for her to lure the Illuminati away with the piece of the Codex that they want so much. They'll be hunting for her, and won't be thinking about Round Rocks, but Midae still wants you to watch out for the little goblin just in case while she's away. Backrix comes to get you, because apparently something's been bothering Wedge, so you head back to camp to see what's bothering the Lalafell. Apparently the Illuminati are getting ready to do something big, because Y'shtola sent a message saying that Alexander's starting to draw a lot more ether from the area. Not to mention the fact that the goblins are gathering a lot of explosives and other stuff likely to build another big weapon. In short, things are pretty bad, so you all need to attack them before they can finish, and Wedge already has a plan, one that of course has the Warrior of Light leading the assault. Biggs has already scouted out the area that he wants to attack from, so you and Wedge head there to get things started. Biggs was expecting Sid to show up, but he hadn't thought that Y'shtola would come too. Since the ether is being drained at a super high rate, she obviously needed to be there to help. From what she can see, Alexander has absorbed a whole lot of ether already, but there's a different kind of energy coming from inside of the barrier. Figuring out what this new energy is will have to wait. For now, whatever the Illuminati are doing needs to be stopped before they can get it fully started, and Wedge has built a device that should help with that. He calls it the Electro Jammer number 3, which is weird since it's apparently the first of its kind. If it works the way that he says it will, it should disrupt all of the Illuminati's communication devices, making it a lot harder for them to organize a defense when you all attack. The device has a little more kick to it than everyone expected, and the explosion that it makes either causes Alexander to lift its other hand, or it was about to do that anyway, and Wedge's timing was just a coincidence. Either way, Wedge refuses to take the blame for the primal moving. The good news, according to Y'shtola, the primal is still asleep. Even better, it moving created a new way for you all to head inside, which means it's time for the Warrior of Light to do his thing. While he does that, Sid and Y'shtola are going to go and tell Matoya what just happened. While you all get ready to make your move, Quick Thinks All Thoughts watches from above saying that everything is playing out exactly how it was written. The Illuminati weren't all that unprepared for your attack, and apparently their experiments don't stop at modifying just machines. One of the goblins who manages to take the title of best named goblin in the game, Ratfinks Twinkledinks, has done quite a few modifications to himself that makes him very not fun to fight. But the Warrior of Light and his crew of adventurers bring down the goblin and his minions. With the attack being a success, the Warrior of Light meets back up with Biggs and Wedge at the base camp, only for them to let him know that there's another problem. While they were patrolling the area, they saw Midae talking to the Illuminati. Not only that, she gave them the piece of the Enigma Codex before going into Alexander with them. It all looks really bad, but it starts to look a lot less like Midae's actually a traitor when Quick Think shows up to the camp talking about how your new friend had been working with them from the very beginning. Him trying so hard to convince you that Midae's a traitor does the exact opposite, but after the Illuminati leave, Backrix says that there is some truth to what the goblin said. Backrix had looked into what had happened 3 years ago and found out that a group of Al Ra treasure hunters had gone to explore the ruins near the Thaliac River only to die during the earthquakes that had come as a part of Alexander's first summoning. It's likely that Midae was one of those treasure hunters, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she had something to do with the summoning, except for the fact that Backrix did some reading from a book that he got from a Charlian, and it said that the person who had written the Enigma Codex 100 years ago was a blue-haired Zayla just like Midae. She can't be the only blue-haired Zayla out there, and instead of speculating, Round Rocks runs off to find the woman to get answers straight from her. Wedge chases after the goblin to keep her safe, while the Warrior of Light continues his attack on the Illuminati, so it's back into Alexander we go. The goblins are definitely ready for your next attack, and they've put together a much more deadly defense, but that doesn't stop the Warrior of Light and his crew. When he makes it back to the camp after the battle, Midae is there, and she admits that she did meet up with the Illuminati, but what she gave them was just a rock that she found, not the codex. But Quick Thinks hadn't been lying about what he said. Midae had not only been working with the Illuminati, she had taught them how to summon the primal in the first place. She had planned on using them to complete her own goal, the same way she was planning on using all of you. The author of the Enigma Codex had been an ancestor of hers, and the goal of creating a perfect world had been a mission for some of her tribe for years. They had worked in secret to bring it about, and those ideals in some corrupted fashion have taken over the Illuminati. The leader of Midae's group had been very charismatic, and Midae had fallen in love with him, which made her even more eager to make his dream come true. That's why she didn't hesitate when he wanted to summon a primal, and 3 years ago they had tried to do it. The summoning went horribly wrong. Alexander killed most of Midae's friends and dragged the man she loved into the core of the machine. Not knowing what else to do, Midae made the barrier to seal Alexander away, but while she was doing that, the codex exploded and the primal disappeared. One of the pieces cut her across the face, which is how she got that scar, and that moment showed her just how stupid their plan had been. It only took the loss of all of her friends for her to learn that lesson, but it still doesn't explain why she decided to help the Illuminati summon the thing again, or help you all get inside of it for that matter. Her reasons are simple and kind of insane. She did it all because she hopes it will let her see the man she loves again. She thinks his soul is still inside of the primal. Telling her how dumb her plan was is not the best idea, so Biggs decides to find out just how bad things would get if the codex was made whole. If the codex is repaired, it would in fact be able to completely control the primal, but you need the complete codex and someone who can read it. With both of those, Alexander could instantly take anyone to wherever they wanted to go, likely draining the life out of the place in the process. Midae used to be able to read the codex, but since that day 3 years ago, she's lost the ability. Only Round Rocks has the gift as far as she knows, meaning that the child is the key to controlling the primal. And right on cue, Wedge runs up to say that the little goblin's been taken by the Illuminati. With Round Rocks being captured, the Warrior of Light and his allies race back into Alexander to find her. Quick Thinks decides to deal with you himself, and he uses a lot of tech to do it, but he's still no match for you. So he tries to fly away, but his damaged machine explodes. It's highly unlikely that he didn't survive, and there's still a lot more stuff you have to fight your way through to free the goblin, so you all head back to camp to get more supplies for the next fight. While you fought Quick Thinks, Midae mapped out the rest of Alexander's interior, so she knows where you need to go, but Backrix doesn't trust the woman. Since she was involved with the original summoning of Alexander, Backrix doesn't know if she's trying to help you all or simply finish her own mission. The goblin has a point, and Midae understands why some of you might not fully trust her, but even though she's the last of her group, the whole Build a Perfect World mission was never really her dream. She was willing to put that same amount of effort into any cause, as long as she was able to do it with the people she cared about. She honestly can't understand why she had ever been able to read the Enigma Codex in the first place, since she wasn't all that dedicated to its teachings. In short, the dream of a perfect world died with her leader. As for Alexander, the part you've been exploring is called Midas, named after an ancient king who had asked the gods for the power to turn whatever he touched into gold. They gave him what he asked for, and he liked it until he accidentally turned the woman he loved into a statue. What he wanted the most ended up costing him everything. That same story can be applied to Midae and her people. The hunt for what they wanted most ended up costing them everything. Now all she wants is to talk to the man she loved just one more time, nothing else. Now that she's told you all her goal, she wants to get back to the important mission of saving Round Rocks, and she has a plan. Alexander has 3 main sections, each with their own core. The Warrior of Light has cleared a path to the core of Midas, but the Illuminati definitely have set up a strong defense to keep you from destroying it. Round Rocks is most likely being kept in Alexander's upper body, but the Illuminati have the path there locked, so you have to destroy the core to shut down the primal. If you break the primal, the Illuminati will have to fix it before they can use Round Rocks, which will give you all more time to save her, especially since they'll probably have to gather more crystals to get the primal back up and running. With the plan made, it's time to get back into the primal and fight the Illuminati. They have indeed put together a powerful set of machines to bar your path, but the Warrior of Light and his adventurer allies take them down, clearing a path to the core. Like before, Midae shuts it down, only for Quickthinks and a lot of goblins to show up. Wedge taunts him for not fighting you alone again since he lost the last time, but Quickthinks claims that he lost on purpose, just like he let you shut down the core on purpose. Because according to him, he knows the future, and he knows that one of you have the piece of the Enigma Codex that he wants. Biggs and Wedge both pretend to have it, while the Warrior of Light and Midae hop on the elevator to escape with the Codex. But proving that he might actually know a bit about the future, Quickthinks parks his hover platform in the perfect spot for it to fall into his lap when your platform lurches and makes the Enigma Codex fall right out of Midae's pocket. With what he wanted in hand, the Illuminati leave you all to ponder just how Quickthinks got the better of you all, and now you have to figure out how to get the Codex and Round Rocks back. Back at the camp, things get even more strange. Backrix is confused about why you're all back so soon. He just saw you all leave a few moments ago, and you shouldn't have had time to even reach Alexander, let alone do all of the stuff you claimed. And he's not the only one that's confused. Everyone outside of Alexander says that you all just left a moment ago. It's almost like time stopped when you stepped through the barrier around the primal. And if that's the case, Quickthinks seeing into the future might not be all that crazy. Midae thinks that there may be a simpler explanation, at least when it comes to how Quickthinks predicted your moves. There's a machine inside of Alexander that's made to do very complicated math problems, and using it to determine the probability of something happening isn't that far-fetched. But that only worked for simple events. It actually makes a lot more sense that there are some time shenanigans going on. For now, it's all only a theory, but Wedge thinks that it's possible that Alexander has distorted time inside of the barrier, and it's possible that the Illuminati know that and they're using it to their advantage. They may even be using the primal to somehow bend time to their will. If they're doing that, then your mission was destined to fail from the very beginning. The doom and gloom speculation starts to bother Biggs, and he decides that it might be a good idea to call Sid and see what he thinks might be going on. It's hard to explain over a link pearl, so Sid and Ishtola head back to the camp to chat. Before anyone can fill them in, Alexander causes the land to shake, so you all race off to see what the primal's doing. From what Ishtola can see, without its core, the primal is starting to break down, but it's doing it very slowly. Using her goggles, Sid sees something even stranger. The ether that was leaking out of the damaged primal started flowing in reverse, like time started passing backwards, something that should be impossible, but since none of you know much about the primal, there's no telling what it can actually do. And to make matters worse, it could be undoing everything you did to shut down the cores. If the Illuminati can simply reset your progress on a whim, beating them will be all but impossible. And to make matters even worse, with Round Rocks in hand and the final piece of the Codex, Quickthinks and the Illuminati gain full control of Alexander. All that's left is for them to wait for the final core to power up, then they'll be able to unleash Alexander's full potential. That won't just give them the power to remake the world as it currently is, they'll have control over time, and that'll give them the ability to rewrite history itself. Midae's been extremely worried about Round Rocks, which has her pacing back and forth a lot. During one of her random walks, she saw something out of the corner of her eye that looks a lot like the cat Shanoa that's always been hanging around Quickthinks. If the cat's there, then it's likely that the Illuminati aren't too far behind, so naturally the two of you go to track it down. The two of you find the cat, and sure enough, an Illuminati spy isn't far off. Sid and Ishtola take him out, but not before he starts bragging about how once they activate the final core of Alexander, they'll be able to travel through time and be unstoppable. The whole thing sounds crazy to Sid, but the goblins seem positive that Quickthinks was a prophet from the future sent to fix history. What makes this situation even worse is he claims that the battle for the future's already been won, at least according to the Enigma Codex. It's depressing to think about it, but it would explain why Quickthinks seems to already know what you were going to do. And if it is true, it will make your entire fight with the Illuminati pointless. Backrix thinks all of this talk is nonsense, and he's more interested in hearing your plans on dealing with the current situation. Ishtola and Sid had been getting things set up for their final assault, with the help of Matoya of course, when the cat Midae had been following had came into the cave and acted like it wanted them to follow it. They had, and it had led them right to the Illuminati spy. It was a happy coincidence, but since the tiny cat's been with Quickthinks constantly, Sid refuses to believe that it turned on its master at random. Either it switched sides, or Quickthinks is setting you all up. If the thing could talk, Sid would want to question it, and since it can't really hurt to try, he tells the cat to meow twice for yes and once for no. Then he asks if it's Quickthinks' cat. It actually answers yes. So Midae asks if it wants to go back home, and it answers no. That makes Cid start to think that it really can understand them. However, that doesn't mean that she's not still working for Quick Things. While that may be true, Backwards remembers Round Rock saying that she had saw a black cat watching her 3 years ago when she had first found the piece of the Enigma Codex. That had seemed like useless information back then, but now Backwards is starting to wonder if Shinoa is the exact same cat. But if it had been, then it would be full grown by now, unless it somehow jumped through time. It all sounds ridiculous, even to Y'shtola who suggested it, but it can't be ruled out. And if that's the case, it could mean that Quick Things has been manipulating things as far back as Midae's first summoning of Alexander, which means you're all likely screwed. Talking about the problem's not really doing anything to fix it, so Cid thinks that your best option is to just head back into Alexander and see what you can find. And Wedge being Wedge, he's made something that should help you get through the barrier and back into the primal. He's running the last tests on the device now, so the Warrior of Light and the others head off to meet him. Wedge knows that he went a little overboard with the last invention, but he's positive that his next one will work exactly how it's supposed to. The plan is simple. You'll be attacking the primal from 2 angles again. Y'shtola's working on cutting off Alexander's ether supply, while the Warrior of Light's going to go and rescue Round Rocks. Without her, the Illuminati won't be able to control time, so that'll even the playing field, hopefully. You'll be heading in through Alexander's head with the help of Wedge's new device, something that he's named Barrier Be Gone, which is supposed to, you guessed it, remove Midae's barrier. The problem is, once the barrier's gone, Alexander will be free to move, so you'll need to do what you're doing fast, or things are going to go wrong very, very quickly. Cid's gonna fly you as close as he can to the top of the primal, then you're gonna go in and clear the way for the rest of them. Once you've done that, you need to get back to the ship so Wedge can turn the barrier back on. All of that needs to be done before Alexander can move, so no pressure. This is hardly the most dangerous thing that the Warrior of Light's done, so he and his adventurer buddies head in. Once the barrier drops, they all rush in, fighting against swarms of goblins as they make their way to the top of the primal and inside, where even more of the Illuminati's toys try to bar their way. Toys that the Warrior of Light takes great pride in destroying. With the path into the top of the primal clear, Cid and the others reactivate the barrier, leaving the top of Alexander's head outside, which gives you a way back in to make your next attack once you're ready. Y'shtola's glad to see that at least one of your missions was accomplished. Cutting off Alexander's ether supply didn't work at all, and she thinks Midae might be able to help her understand why since she summoned the thing. All primals constantly draw ether from the surrounding land, both to make themselves stronger and to keep their physical forms. She and Matoya had figured that they could create a barrier between the land's ether and Alexander using some device called Arcanima that she had Cid put around the area. The devices are working fine, but for some reason Alexander isn't being hindered by them at all. Midae may know why, but she can't fully see how it'll matter all that much. When she was younger, a man that she didn't know came up to her and told her that anything she wanted could be hers if she listened to him. A grown person telling a random kid that should be a big old red flag, but not all kids are given the stranger danger talk. They definitely should be, especially with all the crazies running around now. If Midae's parents had told her not to talk to strangers, we probably could have avoided dealing with the cult and their time-traveling primal, but they didn't, so here we are. She didn't understand what the man was talking about, but he had told her to reunite the shards of the Enigma Codex and perform the sacred rite before the ruins that stand against the river's flow. Then her hopes and dreams would all become a reality. After that, he gave her a horn to use as a catalyst for the summoning and told her that it was a gift from Travanchet. Then he left. Y'shtola's had some run-ins with the man before, and as you may have guessed, he's an Ascian. The horn was supposedly a relic with the power to manipulate ether in the air. The Scions had hunted it for a while since it could be deadly in the wrong hands, and if it's being used by Alexander's third core to draw ether, then there's no way to stop it from drawing ether from anywhere on the star. That means you'll just have to break the core the old-fashioned way, but that won't stop the Illuminati from simply rewinding time to undo everything you've done. All in all, nothing's changed. Your only course of action is to save Round Rocks. The Circle of Knowing had given Y'shtola the mission of recovering the horn, and not only did she fail, it was her failure that caused it to fall into Travanchet's hands. She feels that this incident is as much her fault as anyone else's, so she's more than willing to help in any way that she can. Which means it's time to rescue Round Rocks, or at least to try. From above, QuickThinks is watching you all like he still knows what you're planning, and oddly enough, Backrix notices that his tiny black cat is still with him, which means that the one that's standing next to you all couldn't be his. So he decides to rename it Schrodinger. That's a very on-the-nose thing to name the cat, and if you don't know why, it's a little bit of real-world lore that I guess I will go into. Schrodinger's cat in simple terms is a thought experiment done by Erwin Schrodinger, where you hypothetically put a cat in a box with radioactive material that may or may not be released after a certain amount of time. After a while, as long as the box isn't open, the cat exists in two states at the same time. It's both alive and dead. It'll stay like that until someone opens the box to definitively prove that the cat is in one state or the other. Now you can figure out on your own what that means in regards to this story. Regardless of how weird the cat situation is, Biggs and the others did get a good look around the inside of Alexander, which let them figure out where Round Rocks is being kept. She's in the central core, and from what Biggs could see, all you'll need to do is ride one of those floating platforms there. Of course they'll be guarded, so the Warrior of Light will head back in through Alexander's head, while the others travel through Midas to make sure the Illuminati don't have any traps waiting to ambush you. Once you've gotten your hands on one of the platforms, Biggs and Wedge will do what they do best and cause a distraction. With all the talking done, you all get to work. As expected, there's no small amount of goblins working hard to stop you from interfering with their plans, and their tech and fighting skill makes things a little bit difficult. But after taking down the mercenary named Lame Brick Strikebox, the Warrior of Light has a clear path to Round Rocks. Ishtola, Sid, and Midae had to deal with a few goblins of their own, but it wasn't too much trouble, and you all find Round Rocks safe and sound sitting in a chair right next to the Enigma Codex, directly above the third core of Alexander. The amount of ether Ishtola can see pumping through the core is outright terrifying, and all that power has been being used by Round Rocks, which has made the little goblin a little unstable, but it has given her the ability to alter time. Hearing that it really is true, Midae wonders out loud if she genuinely could fix her mistakes from 3 years ago. So Round Rocks, trying to be a good friend, decides to help and activates Alexander, spinning time backwards despite everyone telling her not to. Biggs, Wedge, and Backrix get a front row seat for the trip since they're on top of the primal, and they're pretty shocked when Sid tells them that they're being sent back in time. They appear along with Alexander right at the moment when Midae and her friends were summoning the primal. They're excited because they think that what they're doing worked, but it's short-lived because Alexander activates and the Illuminati shoots Midae's friends. Alexander starts trying to suck Midae inside, but Dayan pushes her out of the way, getting sucked into the primal in her place. Backrix finds the whole thing fascinating, and he's writing it all in his book until Schrodinger knocks it out of his hands, and both the cat and the book fall off of the primal right as Midae of the past activated her barrier. Whatever Round Rocks did ends, and you're all snapped back to your own time, and QuickThinks shows up to brag about how once again you've done exactly what was written. Ironically enough, it seems like Sid and the others still haven't figured things out, so QuickThinks decides to break it down for them. Time is a circle, or a wheel, and everything you've done or will do has already happened, and you're just completing the loop. In other words, when Midae and her friends summoned Alexander 3 years ago, what they had actually seen were you all traveling back through time. Hearing that makes Midae realize that what had happened to her and her friends was destined to happen, and there was never anything she could have done to fix it. More goblins show up, so Ishtola decides that it's time to retreat since you do have Round Rocks, but knowing that everything she's done is pointless, Midae decides to stay behind. There's nothing you can do about it right now, so you all head out before you get captured. Or killed. Biggs and the others are happy to see Round Rocks, but now that Midae's with the Illuminati, Round Rocks wants to go back for her. Sid had never planned on leaving the woman there, but first you all need to make a plan, so they call Jesse to pick them up. The day brought a lot of painful revelations, especially since the Illuminati had planned out everything from the incident 3 years ago to now, and they had used all of you to do it. But worst of all, the one thing that had kept Midae going was a hope of seeing Dayan again. And now she knows that'll never happen because there's definitely nothing left of the man. This whole mission has been going poorly, but it's not a complete loss. You saved Round Rocks, and without her the Illuminati can't turn time backwards, which means it's time to destroy Alexander's final core, and this time it should be permanent. With the risk of everything you do being undone dealt with, the Warrior of Light and his allies head to Alexander's final core. The defenses that the Illuminati have put in place are top-notch, complete with the Cruise Chaser, which is the Illuminati version of the Transformer Starscream, an amount that really should have been a reward for this fight instead of something that's put on the Mog Station. After destroying the Illuminati's very expensive machine in a fight that Sid and the others watch from a safe distance away, you all get an up-close look at Alexander's third core, and Sid sees just how massive it is. For it to get that big, it must have been drawing in ether at a super fast rate, and with the power that it's stored up, it'll probably be able to regenerate itself even faster than you can break it. Instead of wasting time trying, Sid figures that since the control room has a way to control the primal, it should have a way to turn it off too. Of course, that'll mean bringing Round Rocks back since she's the only one who can use the Enigma Codex. It's not something that any of you really want to put her through again, but Quick Things needs to be stopped, and you can't really think of another way. Speak of the devil and he will appear, and sure enough, Quick Things shows up with his book and cat in tow, claiming that the future shows that things are going to end very badly for you all regardless of your plans. All other passages to the control room are blocked, so to get there you'll have to go right where Quick Things wants you to, and his predictions say that you all die on your attempt. He goes to float away, but as he does, his cat knocks the book out of his hand and falls down in front of you all, similar to what happened with Backrix. Backrix picks up the book that Quick Things has been carrying around, and he realizes that it's actually his journal, the one that had been knocked out of his hand when you all took a trip to the past. So the entire time, the only reason Quick Things has known what was going to happen was because he had the book that Backrix had written about your whole mission. In other words, he's not a prophet at all. All of his predictions came from the book. Granted, this book thing is a big time paradox in itself since Quick Things couldn't have gotten the book until after Backrix wrote the book, but the things that Backrix wrote in the book were a direct result of what Quick Things did after having the book. But since thinking like that would give all of us a headache, we're just gonna let this little time snafu slide. What's even more confusing than the book is why Shanoa, who is also Schrodinger, set all of this nonsense into motion. For starters, the cat should have died from falling off of the primal, but fall damage has only killed like 3 people in the game so far, so I can let that part slide too. Quick Things must have found the cat when he found the book, and he decided to take her in, but that still doesn't explain why the cat is causing all of these time shenanigans by knocking the book around so much. Figuring that out won't help with dealing with Alexander's core, and that's the only thing that Sid is concerned about at the moment. And since the pages in the journal don't say anything about you all dying on your trip to the control room, Sid is ready to get things set up to destroy Alexander for good, so you all head out to get prepared. Things are not as good as you may think, however. Even though Quick Things lost the book and Round Rocks, he's apparently had the power to use the Enigma Codex all along, and he activates it so he'll be ready for when you come back. Once you're all as prepared as you can be, the Warrior of Light, Sid, Biggs, and Wedge head back into the primal to attack the core. Quick Things is ready for you all, and he stops time, summons a smaller version of Alexander, and sets it to fire on you all while you can't move. Time restarts, giving you all just enough time to avoid taking a point-blank Kamehameha to the face, which would have definitely murdered you all. Since the sneak attack failed, the mini Alexander vanishes into a rift in time, one that stays open. Instead of waiting around for it to reappear and hit you all with another sneak attack, one that you might not be able to dodge, the Warrior of Light heads into the rift to fight it, while Sid and the others clear a path to the control room. Fighting this thing that's the embodiment of Alexander's power is not something easily overcome. The Primal takes this fight as a test to determine whether or not you deserve to have a future, which if you fail, I'm pretty sure that you'd be dead, so you don't really have a choice but to win. Which of course you do. When the Warrior of Light pops back out of the rift, Ishtola and Round Rocks both have joined Sid and the others. So with the way clear, you all head into the control room, where Quick Things is more than happy to reveal that he has always been able to control the Primal, so nothing can stop him from rewinding time. A surprisingly still alive Midae makes her entrance by shooting Quick Things' guards, and since he revealed that he can control the Codex without Round Rocks, she understands why he had used the girl instead of doing it himself from the start. Controlling the Primal at full power could very likely destroy the person who tried, so he hadn't wanted to risk his own life until he didn't have a choice. But he is controlling it now, and he thinks that nothing can stop him, so Midae proves him wrong by shooting him in the head. With him down, that gives Round Rocks the chance to undo what Quick Things has started and shut down the Primal's final core. Without it constantly drawing in ether, Alexander has started burning through what it had stored pretty fast, and it won't be long before it shuts down and fades away entirely. Something none of you want to be around for, but before you head out, Round Rocks wants to know, how did Midae survive after you all left? She's not all that sure herself. The place had started shaking and she'd gotten thrown somewhere dark. She had been unconscious there until a few minutes ago. She had probably gotten knocked down a garbage chute or something, but all that really matters is that she's okay. With the mission a success, it's past time for you all to head home. But of course, things can't possibly be that simple, and what should have been a very dead QuickThinks reaches out and activates the Enigma Codex again. Apparently he had done a lot of tinkering on his own body, and what you had thought was a weird looking mask turns out to actually be his head. A head that can survive a point-blank gunshot. The goblin reactivates the core and attempts to use Alexander's power to go back to the past, but the primal decides not to obey him, something that it's apparently been able to do all along. It also does something that you failed to do, and finishes off QuickThinks. It makes Sid think that the primal has a mind of its own, which it does, and just like Midae had thought, that mind belongs to Dan. He's really been in there the whole time watching over her, but the two of them only get to talk for a moment before the core overloads and starts to draw in ether so fast that Ishtola's afraid that it'll drain Eorzea dry in a few minutes if it's not stopped. With it being in the state that it's in, she doesn't think that any of you can stop it now. But Midae thinks that this was all part of Dayan's plan, and she realizes what he wanted her to do, and that is throw herself into the core. She merges with it, and she tells you all to leave as she's drawn into what Dayan calls Alexander's dream. It's a place outside of time where Alexander watches the past, present, and future, seeing each and every possible outcome for every situation. And since he's a part of the primal, Dayan sees it all too. Since Alexander was born from the desire to create a perfect world, it's watched everything unfold to see what path would give the result that it wanted. It saw everything from the Illuminati ruling things to what would have happened if he had stepped in and stopped Dalamu. And after studying every possible outcome, it realized that the only chance there was for a perfect world to be born was if Alexander himself ceased to exist. So it decided to erase itself, since the amount of ether that it consumes by just existing would eventually destroy everything. So instead of taking that risk, it decided to leave the fate of the world in the hands of the Warrior of Light. Having seen him in action, Midae can understand why. Knowing that he would eventually be the source of a major calamity, Alexander sent the cat Shanoa out to put time back on the right path. With that done, there's only one task left. Since the horn was a part of the third core of Alexander, it would be able to regrow itself instantly by drawing in ether from all around the world. The only way to stop it is to seal it away in a moment in time that would loop forever and ever. And that will trap Midae and Dayan as well, something she's perfectly fine with. Outside, Biggs and Wedge notice that everything inside of Alexander's barrier has stopped moving, like time's frozen in place. Round Rocks and the others have made their way back to Idleshire, and while none of them are happy about Midae's fate, she did stop Alexander, so that's a good thing at least. Round Rocks is of course taking this hard, and she runs off somewhere, so you all go to track her down. It's not hard to find her since she isn't exactly hiding, she just wanted to be alone to think. When you all were running out of Alexander, she had found the glowstone in her pocket, but it won't glow for her anymore. Sid thinks it's because the experience that she had with the Illuminati changed her view of the world. The Enigma Codex was made from one man's desire to build a perfect world, and its knowledge is sealed off from anyone who doesn't fully believe in what it promotes. Both QuickThinks and Midae, when she was younger, never questioned the teachings of the Codex, but after what happened, Round Rocks can't really blindly follow anything anymore. The glowstone staying dark in her hands is a sign of her growing into adulthood. That doesn't mean she has to quit dreaming of a better world, but it's time for her to start working on building it with her own hands. Since she was working on that anyway, she's perfectly fine with that. She just wishes she could give the glowstone back to Midae since the woman had liked it so much. But with time being frozen inside of the barrier, that would be impossible. Except for the fact that the cat Shanoa shows up again, and she's been able to come and go freely within Alexander with no problems. Since it can't really hurt to try, Round Rocks gives the cat the stone and lets her take it to her friend, while you all wonder if Midae will ever find her way out of Alexander. They do have access to every moment in time, so they may find one where they can step out and live their life without Alexander potentially destroying the world. But for now, Ishtola and Sid both have their own stuff to do, so they head off, but not before Ishtola hands you a book that Backrix has been looking for. Since you like delivering stuff, she figures that you won't mind. The goblin's happy to get the book, but he's surprised when he reads about a tribe from a long time ago, founded by two people who stepped out of a giant machine with a glowing stone in their hands. And their names were Dan and Midae. So apparently they found their perfect world somewhere deep in the past, and they managed to get Round Rox's gift too. This concludes the story of Alexander. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and donate to the channel so I can keep bringing you guys new content. Until next time, guys. Later.